Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation, brought to you today by our friends over at Crown Royal. Generosity lives in the small things. It doesn't need money, an audience, or even acknowledgement. It just needs a few good people. Crown Royal, crown everything. There are a few good people in this studio at the iconic Sheraton Wall Center. Harmon Dial, David Quadrelli, and our technical producer, Grady Sass, here to break down a 5-2 Canucks loss at the hands of the Colorado Avalanche. Before that, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I was dying laughing at your Jim Rutherford impressions before the show started. So,
well, it wasn't even just Rutherford, and people on the show have heard my Rutherford impression before, but like I've got impressions of a lot of people, as you've just heard, and that's something I bust them out every once in a while on the show. Sometimes by accident, when I'm just rehashing what a person said, I'll just bust into an impression of that person. But yeah, I had a good Faber impression for a bit. I'll bust that out at another point. But there was a time, and this is old listeners of the show will know this. I think I was still like 19 at the time, so like 4 years ago. But Faber and I had just started doing the show together, and he was away for something, or he needed me to do a mic test, and he's like, yeah, just try to sound like me. And I was like, all right. So he like wanted me to do a mic test for him. So I did an impression of him. You know what? I don't even want to do it live because I think I need to do it at least once.
need to practice.
I need to practice it. But when I did it, it was just automatic. I just had the Faber impression, and it was the like intro that he would do. I just said it, and it sounded exactly like him, and we had a good laugh about that. But one day I'll bust out the Faber impression.
No, seriously. As the intro was rolling, I'm like, I don't know if I can keep it together and not start uncontrollably laughing because the Rutherford impression was like 30 seconds before we went live. So great way to set a positive mood for the show.
We had some fun right before the show. I did impressions of like this was when I was like in high school. I used to do a really good like Henrik and Daniel Sedin impression.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I won't do it on the show right now, but when I was like 16, 17 years old, I had a really good impression of those guys.
You gotta practice some of these, refine them, pick your best few, and then one like maybe the listeners will get one per week or something.
We'll do 1 minute long interviews. We'll do one with Chris Faber. We'll do one with Henrik Sedin, and it'll just be me on the phone. Anyways, like I said, Crown Royal is our sponsor today, presenting you this very show. But we have to talk about the loss, the 5-2 loss in Colorado for the Vancouver Canucks. We're going to be joined later by Dave Hall, and he's going to give us some prospect updates, but it's the subject of our poll question. Our poll question today is, are you worried about Elias Pettersson? But before we get to that, Harmon, your thoughts on the game, aside from the Elias Pettersson conversation that we're going to have later.
Yeah, so I think it's important to set the context before we discuss the performance, which is that the Colorado Avalanche are an absolute powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Them getting knocked out in the first round of the playoffs last year because of a weird year where they ran through so many injuries is an anomaly. That team is built so well up and down the lineup. And especially with the state of the Canucks' blue line, we were talking about, oh, is this a litmus test for the Canucks? I always viewed it, and yes, it was a test in some sense, but clearly to me, the Avs are a team that is a stratosphere above the Canucks. And so with that context in mind, yes, there were parts of the Canucks' performance that I didn't like. There are areas that need to be cleaned up, and we're going to talk about that. But by and large, for right up until Cale Makar scored that back-breaking fourth goal, I actually thought there were a lot of positives in the way that the Canucks were controlling play, and they looked like they belonged up until that point. And we'll, of course, get into the few areas where I didn't like their performance, and Pettersson's form needs to be a lot better. That line as a whole needs to be producing more. But despite what the 5-2 scoreline says, I thought the Canucks hung around pretty decently.
The topic of the Statsies today, our analytics-based post-game report over at CanucksArmy.com, written by Mike Liu. The title, The Statsies, a more even game than the scoreline suggests. And as Mike goes into in that article, it was a much more even game. Like, yes, it's a 5-2 final score, but the Canucks were right in that game. And obviously, Cale Makar kind of scores the back-breaking goal to put the Avalanche ahead 4-2. But a really strong game for JT Miller. And I think that's where I want to start is JT Miller's been good all season long, but I think he's really stepped it up lately. And he's been fantastic, especially given the context of he's this team's first-line center right now. And him and Quinn Hughes are basically having to do everything for this team right now. JT Miller's killing penalties. He's on the power play. He's being efficient at 5-on-5. And look, I don't think it's any secret. 2 games now. Dan Riccio sending out tweets about PDG's audition in the top 6 maybe being over. When Dan Riccio's tweeting bad things about PDG, you know we're nearing the end of it. And Miller is still performing despite his line mates maybe not being at their best. All the respect in the world for JT Miller and what he's doing for this team right now. That turnover at the end, excuse me, it came after multiple hard back checks break up what would be sure opportunities for the Colorado Avalanche. So we talk about the forwards coming back in the context of breaking the puck out. Also matters a lot when you're coming back to defend against the rush. And JT Miller had at least 2, maybe 3 instances in that game where those are surefire, grade A tap-in chances for the Avs that Miller comes back and breaks up. I broke that down more in the Stanchies last night, but on the topic of Miller, that 4-2 goal, to me, that's just the second best, maybe best to some people, defenseman in the league right now, just outsmarting you. Like, JT tried to cycle the puck back around and tried to turn around, and Cale Makar was just there. Like, Cale Makar was just waiting for him. And Cale Makar picked it up, went the other way. Grady loved that because he won a bet off of it, but Cale Makar scores the goal. Obviously, goal and assist for Cale Makar. I don't even know what to say. I thought it was a really strong game for JT Miller. That back-breaking goal, again, I know it's Miller that turns over the puck, but that's not a JT Miller turnover.
Yeah, and we've even seen over the last few games, Quinn Hughes occasionally turn the puck over and it ends up in the back of the net. It happens when you're a top player that has the puck in your stick all the time. And again, decision-making wise, it wasn't as if he was forcing a low percentage east-west pass that got picked off at the blue line where you're like, that's just a boneheaded decision. It was a mistake, but it happens. I mean, the power move that he had, just bullying Devon Taves. I love the first of all, the misdirection where he was coming up on the rush and his head was looking past, and then it was the change of speed, and then obviously banking the puck off his skate through Georgiev off.
Ridiculous.
And then, you know, the way he was leaning on Taves and then just snap it that high, picking the corner, that was pretty unbelievable. When we point out where the Canucks fell short in that Colorado game, to me, it starts with, of course, you can point to Pettersson, absolutely. You can point to the power play, especially in light of Colorado's man advantage scoring. But big picture, it was Colorado's forwards had it way too easy getting to the front of the net. When you think about Nichushkin's power play goal, for example, Hronek is right there. He can't allow that pass across.
Hronek has to make a decision if he's going to the shooter or if he's going to the pass. He got caught in no man's land. I think Ray broke that down pretty well in the broadcast.
Exactly.
Too.
And it's not easy, but you have to break that up. The Drouin goal, how can he be uncontested in front? Noah Juleson was on the when they showed the replay of that goal. He was tracking Drouin in front of the net. Juleson's the defender who should be responsible there. And for whatever reason, he for a few seconds right before the goal just lost sight and was looking around and wasn't even close to Drouin. And he wasn't marking anybody. If you leave a man right in front of your goaltender and you got a shot from distance, that's just too easy. You've got to be right on him. You got to be boxing him out. You can't let a forward like that get control, especially because it's Jonathan Drouin. He's not a big power forward type that consistently excels in those areas. He's more a player that is typically created with his skill. And then the Riley Tufte goal as well. Cole caught a little bit off balance. It was a bit of a weird play, point shot, of course, but that's another play. You want to win those net front battles. And the inverse was that the Canucks had a lot of zone time, but what Colorado did well was they prevented the Canucks from being able to generate a lot of grade A chances because they owned that inner slot. They owned the crease sort of area. Canucks would have puck control, but a lot of it would be on the perimeter.
I thought Noah Juleson had a pretty strong game aside from that goal, but that's just what's going to happen when you're not an NHL defenseman and you're playing against a team like Colorado. Like, look, we've been saying for a few days, it feels like the Noah Juleson experiment needs to start coming to an end. But with Mark Friedman going down, with Tyler Myers going down, we're still waiting for updates on both of those guys. Like, this blue line could be in a even worse situation than they were last game and recently. They could be in a worse situation. That is a very scary thought. So we'll find out who's going to get called up if the Canucks need to make a call up in our prospect roundup segment. We'll get to poll question and all the other stuff about the game after. I just want to get to Dave here. In our prospect roundup segment, sponsored by our friends at 4 Winds Brewing. Family owned and operated in Delta, home of the 4 Winds light lager, a crisp, clean, and easy drinking beer. A beer for everyone, a perfect beer for before, after, or during the game. Ask for 4 Winds light lager at your local liquor store or have some delivered right to your door through the online shop at 4windsbrewing.ca. Let's bring him in. Dave Hall, Canucks Army's prospect guru, who's been doing a fantastic job filling the large shoes of Chris Faber. Dave, how's it going today? We got Dave? Grady? Oh.
Dave, we need you to unmute your mic.
How about that?
No.
We're not in?
No, you're good. You're good now. Classic.
Okay, I'm in.
Dave, I got to start by talking a little crap here. Archer Seeloves, he's got his groove back, doesn't he? Talk about him. Where's his game at right now, especially in comparison to where it was earlier this season?
Yeah, so he's bounced back. I mean, I'm not going to get into any post-integration stuff here. I can't break down the exact game, but yeah, he's looked good. Obviously, he's letting 3 goals in the past 4 games, and he's just looked a lot better. I will say one thing to keep in mind is that the defense as a whole has just gotten a little more sound. The first couple games were just brutal, and you could tell that there were just some system breakdowns. And although he did let in some squeakers, but you could tell that the defense was just nowhere near where it is right now. So I think as a whole, the team is playing a lot better. But Seeloves has bounced back, and it's been great.
Dave, we haven't heard a lot about Abbotsford lately, just because we've been so focused on this wagon of a NHL team. What has gone down in Abbotsford, especially with some of the top prospects, since we last spoke to you?
Well, they're on a heater right now. Things were a little touch and go for a while, but they've won 5 straight, I believe it is. And the only thing that sucks right now is they're not playing a lot. They had a stretch of like 5 games in 7 nights, and now they're only playing weekends. So for the next month, they only have a couple games, which sucks. But they're firing. They've had some injuries, but they've had some people step up. The line of Aatu Räty and Linus Karlsson and Max Hassan has been electric. They've been by far the most consistent line that the Abbotsford Canucks have right now. I think they've combined for 15 points as a trio in the last 5 games. So they're just firing hard right now. Of course, Podkolzin came back the weekend. He didn't put up any points, but he's looked really good. He's taking shots. Love the half wall play. He's just ripping one-timers from the side, which is nice. But yeah, just overall, they've been playing really well. I just really like that Aatu Räty, Linus Karlsson, and Max Hassan line.
Speaking of that Räty line, what do you think is making them click and work so well right now?
Well, they for whatever reason, they've just seemed to find something together. But I think the thing that I really like about their game is that they're not just trying to put up points. They're all 3 of them are grinding hard. Max Hassan and Linus Karlsson, we always knew that was going to be a part of their game, but it's just nice to see all 3 of them getting into the dirty areas, never quitting on any plays, and just getting greasy goals when they need to. It's just been a really nice thing to see. They've just found this random chemistry that I think they were a little shocked themselves because, as we know, Räty, he's supposed to play in the center. Their whole plan, I think, was to kind of keep him in that 3rd line center role. But even with the injuries coming back, they just pretty much had to stick with this line because they've just worked so well together for whatever reason.
Dave, in this week's Blackfish Report, you wrote about Tom Willander's point streak. Can you talk more about that? Like, what's going on with Tom Willander right now?
Yeah, they had a random matinee game yesterday, and his point streak did finish, unfortunately, at three games. But yeah, he's finally got that. He's finally putting up the points that we knew he could. Like for the previous games, although they haven't been spectacular, he was still getting opportunities. They just weren't, whoever was passing to just wasn't going in. So he's finally got some points, which was nice. He finally got that goal, that seeing eye shot from the point. But overall, I mean, the thing that we should be getting excited about is on the defensive end anyways. The offense we're hoping will come, but ultimately that's not really what makes his game. So overall, it's just nice to see him finally get the points for the people that love to stat watch. But overall, I haven't been worried about his game, whatever. In fact, I've just been so impressed with just everything that he brings to the table, especially on the defensive side.
Friedman and Myers each sort of got banged up and missed a little bit of time in the game last night. If the Canucks need extra reinforcements on the blue line, who should be the next one or two defensemen they look at from Abbotsford in deserving a recall?
Yeah, the $1 million question. This is where, we've been on a honeymoon for a while. We talked about this so much at the start of the season. Things were going so well, but when those injuries start to pile up, it's going to be dicey, and we're at that point. So I think what I would like to see, I think the easiest answer to that question is Akito Hirose stays up. Hopefully Wolanin, he was banged up all last weekend, so he actually missed both their games. Not totally sure on an update on him, but assuming he's healthy, I think the easy answer is to actually finally move Cole to the right side, bump up Wolanin, just have Wolanin just play in the top four, and then just have Akito Hirose and Juleson just, do their thing on the bottom third. Again, I don't know what's going on with Wolanin right now. So assuming he's out, that's where it gets a little tricky. I think the easy answer is to just bring up McWard for now. If it's a quick couple game stint, McWard's easy because he doesn't have to clear waivers. You bring him up, you plug him in the third line role, and we just see where it goes, and then you just drop him down easy. If it is a little bit longer term for Myers, I actually think I'm finally trending towards going the direction of Jet Wu. Yeah, I just think, for one thing, I would like to see McWard just stick in the AHL and just let him eat those minutes, just get the time that he needs rather than just rush him up. But I mean, with Wu, he honestly kind of profiles the same as Mark Friedman at this point. They're somewhat similar size. They play some similar profiled games. Just they muck it up, they kill penalties, all that stuff. So I think if it's longer term, I don't mind Jet Wu coming up and at least trying him out to see what he does. I just think he's earned it. He's played pretty well. He's not going to give you anything spectacular, but like I said, he's pretty much just Mark Friedman, who's not going to give you anything spectacular either. So I think long term, try out Jet Wu, but of course he has to clear waivers. So if it's short term, that's not ideal, and let's just say McWard. But then you run into the inevitable problem. What are you going to throw Akito Hirose and Cole McWard as a pairing in the NHL? I don't know. So maybe finally you break up Hronek and Quinn Hughes. You put McWard up with, I don't know. No matter what scenario happens, it's difficult. So I think the easiest answer is just get Wolanin up if he's healthy, move Cole to the right side. But it's going to be touch and go, that's for sure.
Dave, it's the subject of our poll question today. Are you worried about Elias Pettersson?
I mean, short answer, no. We've seen these struggles before, and he's come out of it, swimmingly. Just like this time last week, we were talking about, how amazing he is. And so I think for me, the bigger question is what's wrong with him and what are the Canucks doing to help him out. I'm just, it's if it's nothing too serious, it's hard to keep him out of the lineup. But at the same time, if he is ailing, it might be time to give him a night off. Maybe I don't know. So I'm not really so worried about his game because, like I said, he's proven that he can bounce back and just figure it out. But I just think long term here, what is going on, especially with like the balance. You see him just like falling, and it just seems like something's off. And I've actually been following this closely with like Kirill Kaprizov over in Minnesota. I've heard the exact same thing where he just there's something that seems to be off, and I think it's the same thing where there's just something lingering there that's going on, and maybe it's just time to give him a break. I don't know.
We're going to break that down quite a bit in our next segment. Dave, thank you as always for joining us. Great stuff as always, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Dave Hall, ladies and gentlemen. You can go read his stuff over at CanucksArmy.com. Now, there's another article that people like to read at Canucks Army. And Grady, sorry to throw this at you real quick, but we're going to do the Black Friday nationgear.ca deals. That's what we're going to talk about right now. So as people can see, as I gave Grady like a little bit of time to pull up the graphics of what we're selling, I've got my Canucks Army gear on right now. These hats aren't for sale anymore. They're very exclusive. They're behind us. We give them away sometimes at our watch parties, but you can't buy them for different reasons. We're not going to get into that. But stuff like this sweater that I'm wearing, you can go buy this right now at nationgear.ca. There is another new line for Black Friday, an exclusive Black Friday blackout line of clothing that we're selling, and some of it says Stanchie's Reader. There's a hat that says Stanchie's Reader, and I really like it. So be sure to go check it out, nationgear.ca. And here we go. Unleash the darkness with the Nation Gear Blackout Collection. Embrace the bold and gear up with all new styles of our exclusive line, only available for a limited time. Don't miss out on grabbing your favorite team's gear in the baddest styles before they're gone. Get the perfect gift for your favorite fan. Order before December 10th so you can put your presents under the tree. Plus, if you spend $200, you qualify for free shipping. Check it out, and there it is. Attaboy, Grady. Sorry I didn't give you any warning there. Black Friday blackout over at nationgear.ca. I think we're going to have to get you some stuff. Get you some Stanchie's Reader.
Let's go.
Headwear. All right. Our thanks again to Dave Hall. Okay. It's time. Anything else from the game that you wanted to get to before we get to the poll question and Elias Pettersson? Because, like, we're going to talk about Pettersson, but we also need to talk about his line mates. Because I texted this to you and Grady last night while we were all watching the game. It just feels like right now, Andrei Kuzmenko is using, like, Jay Beagle's sticks right now. As soon as the puck touches his stick, offense dies. Like, the offense just dies as soon as the puck gets to Andrei Kuzmenko. And like I said, I don't know if he's using the old Jay Beagle line. I don't know what's going on right now, but when you're Elias Pettersson and you're clearly going through something, Patrick Johnson was on Scaris and Price today, and he wonders if it's a groin injury ailing Elias Pettersson, because as Dave also pointed out, he is going down easier than we're used to. Like, Pettersson's obviously, he does go down often, I think, more than most players, but right now it's just like he looks like Bambi sometimes. It's crazy how Elias Pettersson's going down so easily. And Patrick wonders if it's a groin thing. Again, I don't know what it is, but something's clearly bugging Elias Pettersson. So when you're struggling the way he is right now, you need your line mates to be going. And right now, I don't think Ilya Mikheyev or especially Andrei Kuzmenko are going right now.
Well, I don't think you can point the finger at Mikheyev because
exactly
he's not supposed to drive that line. He's a complimentary piece. And since he's returned to the Canucks' lineup, he's tied with Quinn Hughes for the team lead with 6 5-5 goals. Mm-hmm. He also leads the team in that stretch in terms of 5-5 shots and high danger chances. So he's doing as good of a job as he can. 10 points in 16 games. For me, the big sort of problem outside of Pettersson is Kuzmenko. Now at this rate, I think, first of all, we all know that if this continues, I don't think Kuzmenko is going to be allowed back in Bali for another summer.
Yeah, I'm going to guess no.
Yeah. But watching him play right now, it seems as if even when he's making a nifty little maneuver, it's sort of done in a situation where, okay, he might create space in one spot, but he's not in a prime offensive situation to actually turn it into a scoring chance. Yep. It just feels like he's not getting enough puck touches in quality locations, especially on the inside. For example, the backdoor tap-ins have practically disappeared. He's not getting any of those sorts of looks, which it's tough to sort of determine, okay, how much of that is also tethered to Pettersson himself struggling, because Pettersson, we all know, is the main straw that stirs the drink for that line. And what Pettersson does so well when he's at his best is he's able to draw multiple defenders towards him like a magnet, and that allows Kuzmenko to sort of fly under the radar and find that soft ice. So for as much as Kuzmenko is struggling to have these dynamic flashes, I also wonder how much of it is, okay, if Pettersson isn't able to create extra space for his line mates, like it almost hinders Kuzmenko's ability to cook as well.
Yes. Absolutely. And I just wonder with Kuzmenko, we've pointed out that Pettersson is obviously the straw that stirs the drink. I almost said the stir that stirs. Anyways. But Grady, you had something you wanted to say. I waiting for you there.
Yeah, no, I've just noticed a couple times when Kuzmenko, like, he'll dance himself into position and he'll open up space, but when he's about to get his shot off, he stops moving his feet and almost becomes too stationary. And there was a play last night where defender just kind of closed in on him, and I forget if they like lifted his stick or just got their stick on his, but he just seems like he doesn't realize how much time he has to get the shot off, and he's kind of just stuck there, and it's almost too late, and he can't quite separate himself from that defender to kind of close in and get the shot off.
It reminds me a lot of what we heard from Talkit about making the move, and then you're not in a prime scoring opportunity. You make the move, and then you have another wall to go through, and then you're kind of stuck. You don't have anywhere to go from there. It's just, look, Talkit didn't necessarily say that was about Kuzmenko, but he did say in the same press conference, or the press conference the day before, that Kuzmenko's got to pick it up. Like that was the quote from Talkit. Is he was asked about if it was a benching. Yeah, Kuzi's got to pick it up. That's what he said. That is what Rick Talkit said about Andrei Kuzmenko, and I think it's very hard to disagree right now. But on the other hand, sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say what Talkit was sort of referencing in terms of you make one nice dazzling move, but then you've got another obstacle to get through, which is difficult. So it's not really turning into a scoring chance. That applies not only for Kuzmenko, but for Pettersson as well, because the last handful of games, anytime I do see him finally sort of beating a defender in one-on-one situation, it's as if he's in a spot where he's entering the offensive zone closer to the wall, and he has another player that he has to beat, and then it's the second guy that is stripping him of the puck in a lot of these situations.
A lot of interaction in the chat right now. People are asking if Pettersson might just be sad. So let's get to our poll question. Our poll question. Yeah, people are. Is Pettersson sad? That's what Sour Laundry said.
Why would he be sad? They're winning boatloads of hockey games.
He's not playing great, and that's what we're going to talk about. Elias Pettersson is the subject of our Atlas Goods poll question. Bring it up here, Grady. Brought to you by our friends over at Atlas Goods. Go to atlasgds.com. Use promo code CC15 for 15% off your first order of pop rinds. Best fresh pork rinds straight from your microwave or air fryer. Our poll question today: are you at all worried about Elias Pettersson? Yes, starting to worried, not worried, and as always, I'm angry. 43%, the majority of the vote, Harmon, say I am starting to worry about Elias Pettersson. 33% of people say I'm not worried, and 22% just say flat out, yes, I am worried about Elias Pettersson. So if you combine yes and the starting to worry crowd, there are more people worrying about Elias Pettersson or close to worrying about Elias Pettersson than there are people who are not worried about Elias Pettersson. 2% say they are angry.
I think Grady just wants to quickly chime in on PD.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Have you guys noticed, like, the last few games, he's just falling over so much?
Yeah.
And at 5-on-5, like, he's just not opening up space for himself, like, you know, projecting the next play before it happens, kind of, you know, envisioning, okay, here's where the puck needs to go. Here's where I need Kuzmenko to be at backdoor. We're not just seeing that, like, cerebral, you know, ability for him to kind of see things happen before they do.
This has been happening for a while. 4 points in his last 7 games, a -8 plus-minus rating during that stretch of time, and just 1 goal in his past 7 games. And, you know, plus-minus is obviously a bit of a flawed stat. We talk about that all the time. But last night, on the ice for 3 goals against, 2 of which were at even strength. That's not what we're used to seeing from Elias Pettersson. Grady, I think you make a great point about him falling over a little bit more and it being kind of noticeable. Makes you wonder if it's a lower body thing. Like we said, PJ threw that out on Sakaris and Price today. Makes you wonder. I don't know what's wrong with him, but there is something clearly off with Elias Pettersson right now. He's like, we've seen this for a while this season now, but Harmon, what was the conversation you and I had the first week you were here doing the show? Was right now we're seeing Pettersson clearly not at his best in terms of like two-way ability and everything we're used to seeing from Pettersson, but he's still putting up points. And he was doing it even though we knew he wasn't at 100%. He didn't look like himself. He was still finding a way to pick up points. We talked about how Connor McDavid's done that in years past. When he goes through tough stretches, he's still putting up points. Now the points aren't coming for Elias Pettersson. So are you worried about Elias Pettersson, Harmon?
Worry might be too strong of a word, but I am a tad concerned. I'm starting to get a tad concerned. Watching him play right now, the biggest difference, in addition to what we've already mentioned, is that he just doesn't look dangerous when he's taking defenders on in one-on-one situations. When Pettersson's at his best, it's not that he's necessarily flying by defenders in those spots, but he's able to make a lot of plays in high traffic despite it.
Yeah.
And it just sort of feels like right now, he lacks the explosiveness with his skating. Look, we know he's not Connor McDavid, but he's still a lot of times able to, in the past, pick up steam and pull away, stop up, pull up off of an entry, create plays that way, and then rely on his cerebral vision. First of all, I don't think he's creating enough separation for himself with the skating right now. And then secondly, in these high traffic situations, when he doesn't have a lot of spot to maneuver the puck, he's mishandling it a lot more than usual. Whereas when he's at his best, his stick handling is so precise, and it feels like he can stick handle in a phone booth. It does not matter how much pressure a defender is applying on him. It doesn't matter how good a defender's gap control is when he's defending Pettersson on the rush. When Pettersson's at his best, he's still able to make plays in those situations. And right now, I see a combination of he just doesn't have the dynamic skating to separate and create space, and B, normally he might be able to overcome that with the stick handling. And right now it feels like he's just mishandling it, turning it over in spots that he doesn't normally do. There's obviously going to be a lot of discussion around this idea that, okay, if he's working through this undisclosed ailment, do you rest him at some point? It is interesting to sort of look at other situations around the league. I just don't think stars like to take that break at all. I mean, Dave mentioned Kaprizov in Minnesota. That's been huge, and it's a massive reason why the Wild are struggling. But also Austin Matthews last year was working through his wrist injury, did not look the same, especially in the first half of the season at all. And a lot of Leafs fans were clamoring, hey, the regular season doesn't even matter for us. It's the playoffs that are what's actually at stake here. Give him a break, shut him down. And Matthews just kept sort of playing, and then it was down the stretch when he finally started to look like himself again. Connor McDavid right now, and of course that's a little bit of a different situation because the Oilers are desperate for points, but he missed some time with injury. Clearly, I think returned a little bit too early and does not look like himself at all. It just feels like stars don't like these things, and he's also got a contract he's playing for, so I don't know. It's not an easy situation to navigate, but at the same time, when you do bring that up and referencing Kaprizov, there's also a point at which you go, if he's not really moving the needle, what's the point of having him sort of in the lineup? At some point, the risk to reward just isn't there compared to if you rest him and hopefully have him heal a little bit.
The Canucks are playing a lot of hockey right now, and that obviously can't be good for whatever is affecting Elias Pettersson, but you just brought up resting him. I was looking at the schedule to try to see if there was any stretch of games where it might make sense, or where there is a game where you could say, okay, you're going to rest this game. I think it's next week. Like, I think next week is the Canucks' only chance to really get in front of this if they want to. Like, if he's still saying, I'm good to go, but the Canucks want to say, you know what? This can't hurt you to have this little bit of rest. We're going to rest you. You've got to do it next weekend, because what's happening next weekend is on Thursday, the Canucks play the Vegas Golden Knights. Thursday, November 30th, they play the Vegas Golden Knights. On the 2nd of December, they are in Calgary, but then they don't play again until the 5th when New Jersey is in town. Also note that I said in Calgary. So that's a 1-game road trip, and you're playing the Calgary Flames. Look, I get it's hockey in Canada. I understand Elias Pettersson wants to play in every game if he's capable, right? But what we learned last night, Harmon, is that when he's not at his best, the Canucks are just not able to beat teams like the Colorado Avalanche. Beat these really upper echelon teams. They're just not good enough to do it. And that's fine. the president of the team said at the start of the year, if everything goes perfectly, we have a playoff team. I'll tell you that Elias Pettersson putting up 4 points in his last 7 games is not the definition of perfect. That is not good news for this hockey club right now. So if you're going to do it, sit him out on that Saturday game on the 2nd. That's 5 days off for him to recover. He plays the Vegas game, plays against New Jersey on Tuesday. After the Vegas game, you just come out, you say, hey, Pettersson's day-to-day. Everybody's going to freak out, but he's day-to-day, and you get to actually, for once, you get to have a player actually be day-to-day and then come back a few days later. It's not day-to-day and then is day-to-day a month later or whatever. For Pettersson, that's the only stretch of the schedule that I'm looking at where I can see, okay, this might make sense, because there's basically an identical stretch the next weekend, but that Saturday game is against Carolina, and I don't think you want to be sitting Pettersson against the Carolina Hurricanes. So I think if they're going to do it, the chances next week, like next week is your time to do it. If you're going to rest this player to give him an extra chance to heal, you're going to do that next week, because there's no real break in the Canucks schedule until Christmas. And do you want another whole month of Elias Pettersson playing the way he is right now? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's also tough for us to discuss this and have strong takes when we don't really know the extent of what's going on.
Yeah, because
really at all.
If it were a groin injury, like, does 5 days even help you? Like, and let's say it's not groin, let's say it's wrist. Does 5 days really help you that much? Like, in my mind, it can't hurt. But again, we don't know the whole situation. But yeah, go on.
And while we are sort of, I think it's also important to clarify, while we are discussing this idea of what is he potentially playing through, Tuckett has, of course, referenced that he's like earlier in the season that he's been playing through something undisclosed. He's been banged up. He's taken maintenance days. So this isn't a case of us looking at Pettersson struggling, not looking like himself, and then a reverse engineering, oh, he must be hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
This is something that the coaching staff is at least indirectly alluded to themselves. Big picture, I think it does tell you a lot about this team. We're seeing a trend where the best version of the Canucks requires Pettersson and Miller to be firing at their best at the same time. You think about the stretch, like, I'm going season by season since the Canucks have had Pettersson and Miller. So in 2019-20, they obviously make the playoffs, have the bubble run. Pettersson and Miller were both outstanding. That's a lot of line year. 2020-21 season, the 56 game all Canadian division year. Pettersson was totally out of sorts in the first half, went down with a wrist injury in the second half. JT also, that was probably one of his least effective seasons as a Canuck when you look at his point production, two-way play as well. So neither of them were really going. And of course, Canucks really struggled that year. 2021-22, JT Miller was a beast, had a 99-point season. But Pettersson, again, was really struggling, was awful in the first half of the season until finally picking it up through the last 30 games or so. And then last season, Pettersson was dominant. But guess what? For the first 50 games or so, until Rick Tocchet came in, JT Miller's two-way play was miserable. And now when you look at big picture, 20 games, how have the Canucks performed? Off to an excellent start. Well, guess what? For the most part, Miller and Pettersson have been dominant. So I think
it's like the first time that they've both been dominant as
since
Canucks.
2019-20,
Yeah.
which was a really successful season for the team. So I think it just goes to show you that this team is going to go as far as Pettersson and Miller click at the same time, assuming of course that Hughes and Demko hold up and play to their potential as well.
We mentioned Patrick Johnson's reporting earlier on potential injuries for Pettersson. His latest article at the Province just dropped, and it's quote, it's suspected he's dealing with a groin problem, maybe a wrist injury too, which would make sense because we saw last night, like, he got thrown out of a couple draws, but he just, what did he didn't take like his first draw, or Daniel Wagner had the stat, but basically like wasn't in the middle of the dots for a while there. And you haven't seen him just like do those inside out dekes, which would allude to a potential wrist injury, or Harm, you talked about like the separation earlier, which would allude to potentially the groin injury. So,
I was looking into that face-off thing. Pettersson got thrown out of 2 face-offs before that, and there was a lot of power play time, and obviously JT is going to take all the draws. So like, I saw it from Wags. It was an interesting observation, but I'm not looking at that and saying, yeah, okay, this is proof that there's something wrong with the wrist. Like, Jay Patton is hit last week with us, even said like Petey's out there taking face-off practice. Like he's choosing to go do this.
Extra drills.
Extra drills. I again, Grady, thanks for that chime in about PJ's article. I don't know if it's the wrist. It might be. We don't know what it is, but I don't know. Like it's something to keep an eye on, but that face-off one last night, the context there matters, I think.
Yeah. It's fair.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on Pettersson? I had a few things. Like I wrote down so much because I was thinking about this quite a bit. And like the one thing that I should also mention, and I'm sure people know this, is I think the reason we're talking about this is not only the low point totals in the last 7 games, but this is the first time this season Pettersson's gone more than 2 games without registering a point. And one of those games against San Jose. Like they played the San Jose Sharks and Elias Pettersson didn't get a point. And I lost daily Faceoff Survivor Fantasy because of it. Anyways.
Frank did too.
Yeah, so did a lot of people. Anyways. Yeah, the thing I wonder the most is just we don't know what the injury is. So I know we mentioned this, but like who knows if this can even be fixed with a quick rest? And if it can't, like, like you don't want it to keep getting worse, right?
Yeah. But also the one thing we want to be careful about too is, yes, he struggled recently. Several games for sure, especially 5-on-5. But there's also an element of recency bias because overall, you look at the 20-game sample, and he's probably still been, unless you want to argue, JT Miller, you could make the case for him, but over 20 games, he's still been arguably the team's best forward.
Yep.
Not just in terms of what he's done offensively, but even the 5-on-5 sort of 2-way numbers for the season as a whole, they've definitely slipped lately, which is why we're having this conversation.
Exactly.
But for the season as a whole, yes, they're not at the dominant level that we're used to seeing from Pettersson, but they're still, for instance, they're still significantly better than the Miller Lines' numbers. This is still a player that when he's on the ice
on the season, not lately.
Yes,
okay.
On the season,
sure, yeah.
The Canucks have been out shooting and out chancing their opponents. And I also wonder, other parts of the lineup have also had, we've talked a lot about the PDO bender. I also wonder how much of it is, the Pettersson line has absolutely come back down to earth in a huge way in terms of how many of their shots and chances they are converting on, because lately in the last few games, Kuzmenko, for example, has had some good looks and he's missed the type of chances he normally buries. So I wonder how much the perception would be, like, it'd still be something we'd be noticing, observing that, hey, Pettersson and Kuzmenko don't look right. They don't look effective. And certainly the underlying numbers of the last handful of games back that up. But I wonder if it wouldn't be as alarming if Kuzmenko, for example, was finishing some of the chances that we're used to seeing him finish.
If only. Like, if only. I feel like I need to talk about it more. I've really not been impressed with Kuzmenko lately. Like, either end of the ice, the defensive game we knew isn't fantastic, but offense is just every time the puck touches his stick, you can bank on the play dying. It's crazy. Like, it's bananas right now, what we're seeing. Like, has he created any offense in the last 5 games? Like him himself carrying the puck in, making a smart play past the red line. Once? Like, can you think of one instance? Like, I can't. I know I'm being a little dramatic right now, but like, my goodness, you're not. This is not what you want to see from Andrei Kuzmenko, and I don't know how much longer of a leash he gets, to be quite honest with you, on that line. But I don't think there's much of a better answer. Like, we didn't even talk about PDG. Like, he had a bad game as well. Anthony Beauvillier, who looks like he's playing well right now. Good article right now over at CanucksArmy.com where Jeff Pettersson spoke with Beauvillier. I don't know. Like, Beauvillier is probably replacing PDG. So who goes up to replace Kuzmenko? Like Connor Garland?
No, you're not going to break up that line.
Exactly.
He's been driving the bottom 6. There was a funny tweet that Chester Ming had. Grady, can you bring that up, please? It was sort of alluding to Beauvillier and Garland and Joshua and all these types. Chester said the Canucks' PDO regression is basically watching Bluger, Garland, Joshua, and Beauvillier generate 1 billion scoring chances a game and never scoring.
That's true.
It's so true.
Can you run the numbers on that, Harmon? Is that accurate?
Man, by the way, speaking of PDO, their PDO is 95.8 in the last 7 games in which they've gone 3-4.
So now they went from being lucky to now categorically unlucky.
Yes.
That's the Canucks, baby. That's the Canucks. Okay, anything else on Pettersson before we get to anyone else?
No.
Okay. Then it is time for anyone else. Grady, start getting these in the chat here. Presented by our friends at DoorDash. It's our listeners' chance to get involved and hit us up in the YouTube live chat. And it's also our listeners' chance to get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more. That's right. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when they download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. That's all capital letters, NATION, and the numbers 25. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms do apply. Okay, we've got a few in here. The first one from Jeremy Lee. Anyone else? Do you believe in load management in hockey? We so rarely see it. We see it embraced, I think, too much by leagues like the NBA. I know the NBA is like cracking down on it right now, but like a few years ago when there was all that load management stuff, I think it was even happening last year. Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, Kawhi Leonard is a good example.
I think you do see it with goaltenders. I mean, back in the day, play back to back. Sometimes you would get 3 and 4 if you so dare. Certain players, I think some of the older veterans in the league that, you can kind of sometimes with a younger player, like you want to kind of make them earn it, so to speak. But I think it exists. It's definitely not as frequent as other sports, but
I think we need to see it more with the superstars, Grady. Like you just brought up a good point, like especially about the young guys. How often do we see like a bottom 6 player or a bottom pairing defenseman get swapped out in a back-to-back? And it's just like, oh yeah, we're just giving him the night off. We want to get this guy a look. Like, I think you need to see it a little bit more with the stars. And look, this is hockey, and in hockey, we all know this, there is a culture of playing through whatever's ailing you. And while that's respectable to some extent, you also need to be playing at your best for most of the season. So, like, again, in the context of Elias Pettersson, again, we don't know what the injury is, so it's hard to just have these strong takes about it. But if, capital letters, if, you can rest for 5 days by missing 1 game and get back closer to who you really are as a player by missing 1 game, you have to do it. Like, you have to.
Yeah, I get what you mean in terms of when we're having this conversation about load management. First of all, I think Grady's bang on in that it's massive for goaltenders. We're clearly seeing that trend with starters and a more even split between the number 1 and the number 2. With superstars, it's interesting. I agree that if a guy is ailing through something like whether it was Matthews last year or Kaprizov right now, that maybe you should be more inclined to give those guys some rest. But if the guys are healthy, I honestly don't think that there needs to be much of a difference in terms of load management, just because the margins are too fine in the NHL. This isn't like the NBA, where if you have a strong team on paper, you can just sleepwalk your way through the regular season. I mean, look at Colorado last year, right? Colorado, for example, I'm sure they would have loved to not lean on McKinnon, Makar, Taves, Rantanen so heavily, but they were so banged up that they had no other depth, and they just had to play the wheels off those guys, and they were fighting in mid-January just to get into a playoff spot.
I think if your team has the depth, you can kind of scale back ice time for certain players, and that can be like in-game load management.
That's a great point, Grady.
Especially if you have a condensed schedule. But yeah, rotating in, that's why you see teams travel sometimes with like an extra D-man on the road, right? Is that they just want to, the guy's banged up or, feeling not up to par, then you bring a guy in.
Yeah, I think a guy like Quinn Hughes would revolt if you told him, second leg of a back-to-back, you're not playing, buddy.
Exactly.
Just take the night off.
That's the other thing, is players don't like that. Especially like this was a joke. I can't remember who tweeted it, but shout out to the person who tweeted it that I read. we heard that Elias Pettersson was banged up right before the San Jose game. It came out that he was a little banged up and had the maintenance day. It's like, yeah, if you think Elias Pettersson is taking that San Jose game off, I think he got 4 points in that game. If you think he was taking that game off in a contract year, you are kidding yourself. This is a good one here from Mother Nucker 22.
Careful, Quads. Careful.
Hey, he said Nuck. It might be time to sit PDG for someone like Pods or Baines who can slot in on the fourth line while Beauvillier or Höglander move up. I think that's a great take. I don't know if it's time just yet. We'll ask Dave Hall next week. Too bad he's not here anymore. But sorry. Arshdeep Baines bumping up to a fourth line role? Like, you don't think he could do that right now?
Why can't PDG? PDG's a totally good fourth line player.
Sure, but right now Baines putting up the points. If he has more offensive upside, don't you want that more in your bottom six? If he's bringing the same thing on the forecheck and on the walls, which I don't know if he is yet. I don't know if he is.
I don't think he's as good in those areas.
You're right. I think he might be able to get there by next year, though. Because
I don't think you need to rush like Baines. Let him.
Sure.
Like, there's inevitably going to be injuries.
Yep.
The same way there is on the blue line right now. The same way there's going to be with your forwards. When those injuries strike, yeah, Baines should be that guy. Sure. He deserves that opportunity. He should get an NHL look this year. But I don't think you need to take DiGiuseppe out of lineup when he's the type of player that's actually better suited, I'd argue, for a fourth line role than Baines or Podkolzin is.
Well, yeah, definitely not Podkolzin. You definitely aren't bringing up Podkolzin to play in a fourth line role. I think that's been the number one thing that's pissed us off about Podkolzin and his deployment is just like, you're playing well. Here's a shot in the top six. Oh, 2 games in the top 6 and you didn't play well. Here's a healthy scratch mixed in with some bottom 6 time. But now you started playing well again. Okay, back to the top 6 and just juggling
pinballs everywhere.
Yeah, the guy can't find any regular deployments. So I think the take Faber had before he went corporate was leave Podkolzin in the AHL all season long. Do not call this guy up, basically under any circumstances. Let him play all year in the AHL. Let him come up next year and see what he's capable of. Okay, this one from Oz Nuck. This is a good one. After last night with Manson, etc., could we be seeing the development of a new rivalry with the Avs? When these teams meet in the Western Conference Final this year, I think it's... We might be seeing a little rivalry brewing. I thought that was hilarious, Manson doing the theatrics of Besser snapping his head back. But I don't know. Like,
I was surprised that was a 5-minute major.
Me too. And I think everybody was.
I was just gonna say, what did you guys think of that overall?
I think Brock sold it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
great discussion, guys.
No, but you see defensemen in front of the net like get their stick up, cross check to gain body position. And Manson's a big dude, right? And he's just kind of, trying to make it sure so Brock can't get behind him. And it just so happens when he gets his stick up, it's like right in Brock's chops, and he went down rather easily. So, it was great theatrics in the box. And just to the rivalry point, I think we're going to need a playoff series before we get to that level.
Western Conference Final.
By the way, I think it's hilarious. Clearly, the refs on the ice probably agreed that Manson didn't deserve the major, because have we ever had a situation when a team has been awarded a 5-minute power play and the other team is the only one that had a partial power play in that 5-minute stretch?
I genuinely don't know. I don't know. I would be very curious on the stat on that, because that was a crazy sequence. I tried to write it down in the stanchies after the game, and I was trying to remember what happened, and I'm looking at the game log, and I'm just like, wait, this was a penalty, this was a penalty. And then it hit me that there was no power play time on that 5-minute power play, which obviously hurt the Canucks. Let's, when we break down the game, we also should bring that up. That obviously didn't help the Canucks. I don't know. Like,
the officiating was a gong show in that second period. It just ruined the vibe. And
10 penalties in the game, 8 of them called in the second period.
The first period was so electric.
Yeah.
It was so entertaining.
Looked like a classic, looked like an instant classic game. The kind of thing you'd want to see in the Western Conference Final, one might say. And in the second period, the refs just I thought they ruined the game.
Yeah.
But the counter to that is the Canucks didn't do enough on their power play, right?
Sure, but I'm saying for both sides. Like, I'm not even just saying for the Canucks.
But guys, bad officiating in sports has been there since the beginning, and it's not going to go away. And at some point, you have to control what you can control, and that is going out either getting a strong kill or going out and producing on the power play. Yes, the referee should be better, but it's the low-hanging fruit to blame officiating for an outcome of a game.
I mean, that's totally fair. I agree with you, but I'm sure both of us weren't saying that in relation to the Canucks losing.
Yeah.
We weren't saying that officiating was bad and that, it cost the Canucks.
Yeah.
Because
We're
that's
not
not
DJ
it.
hearing it.
I just saw a lot of that on Twitter last night. Like
Yeah.
people constantly
Yeah.
blaming the officiating.
Yeah,
no.
the
And
officiating
it wasn't great. Let's make that clear. But
It was
you
bad
know,
for both teams.
when is it? Yeah, exactly. That's kind of my point.
It was
here.
more disappointing from the sense of it ruined what was such a fantastic opening 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we were talking about. When you get to the Western Conference final, you're going to want to see more
Yeah, of
like that
course.
opening 20 minutes.
Well,
Okay.
you just wait till the refs put their whistles away.
Andrew Nudskov. This is a fantastic contribution. Get ready for this heater, Harmon. It's coming your way.
Yeah.
DeSmith, Garland, and Hoglander for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
Oh,
I don't know.
proposal
Ryan-
season.
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins cap hit looks really attractive.
So that's what this is.
Go ahead, Harm.
NHL be a GM mode.
Well, the Oilers need a goaltender. They have to trade with Columbus. Steve Dangle tweeted out today too. They have to trade with Columbus. But if they trade with Vancouver, you're getting Ryan Nugent-Hopkins back. You're shoring up that center depth.
You would not get a successful Edmonton would not accept that in rookie mode of be a GM mode.
The people at our chat are saying that's a lot. That's too much. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is overrated. People at our chat don't like it from the Canucks perspective.
Wait, so sorry, it was DeSmith,
Garland, and Niels Hoglander for Ryan
That's
Nugent-Hopkins.
not a serious trade proposal.
No.
That is not serious at
The
all.
people in our chat don't like it for the Canucks.
Of course not. But here's the thing: Edmonton needs a legit goaltender. They can't just bring a backup in. Like I've seen all this talk. They should get like Montembeault from Montreal. Like,
Spencer Martin.
no, that's not going to solve their issues. Like they need a workhorse back there. That's why they signed Jack Campbell.
Look at the Casey
Sorry.
Smith numbers. Just send that to Ken Hall and say, check this guy out.
Nuge only makes $5.125 million.
Exactly, which is why it's a great trade for the Canucks, I think. I don't know why you guys hate this trade. so much for the
Interdivision
Canucks.
trade? No. It's fantasy land. I'm sorry.
I don't know. 912 save percentage. Best save percentage of any goaltender in Edmonton this season. In all seriousness, though, we're not going to get into the Oilers too much, but holy cow, they need to do something. They fired the coach. That gave them one win, and then it fell flat. Like, it obviously wasn't Jay Woodcroft, but we always say that, and then usually the new coach bump usually lasts a little longer. First of all, it wasn't Jay Woodcroft's fault. He gets fired, and immediately the Oilers fall back flat on their face. Like, I can't think of a time when that's happened, where the coach has been fired and the new coach bump lasts like what, 1 or 2 games, and then the team goes on a 3-game skid. Like, my goodness.
Yeah, this is why they needed to hire Bruce Boudreau.
Oh, yeah, make 2 coaching changes. Okay.
I thought this. We'll just
Go on.
We can wrap up with this from Grim Studio here on YouTube. Who do you play in net for the back-to-back?
Casey DeSmith, both games showcase him for the Oilers.
Whoa.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay, you go Thatcher Demko against the Kraken, and then you go DeSmith against the Sharks. I think you want your best guy when you're trying to bounce back against the Kraken. That's just my take. What do you think, Harm?
Yeah, I agree. I like that idea.
All right. Well, let's get to our Betway bet of the day here, Grady. It's a football bet. There's no hockey on. We're watching football right now. This looks like the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington W's.
Football team.
No.
No,
Commanders.
Commanders.
There you
Yay!
go.
Okay, 1-0 Harm for this for the football trivia tomorrow.
Washington W.
No, yeah, well, they don't have their name. Dallas, I knew, is the Cowboys.
They're 4-7.
Football team.
They had a name change. I don't even remember their old name, but they had a name change. I don't remember it. I feel like we can't
They
say it
used
on
to
the
be-
show if it was named. If it was a name
Cultural
change.
inappropriation.
Oh, okay. Anyways,
But they went to the football team, and then they went to the Commanders.
they were the football team.
Yeah, the Washington football team.
Commanders is not a great name though,
I mean,
especially if that's why is their logo a W?
Washington.
Washington.
So that's like the Canucks being the Canucks.
Isn't the orca shaped in a C?
For
Yeah.
Canucks, the orca's not shaped in a V, or that's like the
They
millionaire.
literally had a
That's like the Millionaires logo just being a V. It doesn't even say Washington in the W or command. Like that's the laziest logo of all time.
Harm, we need to show Quadrelli the Cleveland Browns and what they do.
No, I know
With
the
their
Cleveland
helmets.
Browns logo. It's a helmet, orange helmet.
nailed it.
Exactly.
Look at me. Off to a hot start for the football quiz, which will actually take place. Oh, yeah, we got a bet here. Our football trivia with Wyatt Arndt is going to happen tomorrow. But first, our Betway bet of the day. It's another football bet. I'm riding with my New York Jets once again.
Because that went so well for you last week.
That's right. Our Betway bet of the day. The New York Jets to win on the money line over the Miami Dolphins at plus 375 odds. A $10 bet returns you $47.50. Must be 19 plus to play.
I think
choose to play. Please play responsibly. This is not actual betting advice, folks.
I think people would make a lot of money if they inversed all your football bets.
Hey, maybe that's a
Fade
strategy.
quads.
Maybe that's a strategy. Maybe
Do
it's
the
a
opposite.
strategy.
Although another Betway bet of the day hit last night.
That's right. That's right.
Harm, you don't want to mention that one, huh? You only mentioned the losses.
Harmon respects my hockey vibes.
And I do. The only reason I made fun of you for that yesterday was not because I disagreed with the bet. I just made fun, or I laughed and made fun of it because you picked the same bet.
That's right.
Basically two games in a row, which
Fitting,
seemed
but
like
it's
low-hanging
working.
fruit.
It's working.
That's right. That's right. That's our
And
Betway
you
bet
just
of the
knew
day.
Quinn was going to bring it. Now, he didn't look his best last night, but he still finished with 4 shots. So
Absolutely. They can't afford to trade Ryan Nugent-Hopkins with how often they stack McDavid and Draisaitl. Although I
Yeah,
feel
they
like
already
should
have
just
depth
go-
Are we
issues.
seriously discussing this?
I
Come on,
like it.
guys.
I like it. Well, okay,
Is
what would it
Jim
take?
betting
What would it
GM of
take?
the
What
Oilers?
would it take to get Ryan Nugent-Hopkins out of Edmonton if you're the Canucks?
Thatcher Demko. They'd ask for Demko. And you would not do that if you're the Canucks.
No, you wouldn't. So you think
Or
that's
they
where
would
the deal
want-
starts?
Or they
You
would
can't structure anything around Casey DeSmith.
No.
Throw in Seelovs. He's been playing well. They would love Seelovs would probably start for the Oilers right now. You wouldn't get Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for him.
I'm like face palming right now.
Sure, you wouldn't get Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for Archer Seelovs, but maybe if Edmonton throws in a first.
Quads, you were not serious.
Okay.
too
We'll
much
close it
EA
out there.
sports for you, my
We'll
friend.
close it out there. I still hate this logo. I can't get over this. This is horrible. It's just a W.
I actually like the color scheme.
It looks
though.
like origami. It looks like they folded
I
paper.
I actually think it looks kind of slick.
The color
helmet.
scheme looks cool. Sure,
That's what
the
I'm saying.
color
It looks-
scheme's nice.
I was about to say it looks effing dope, and caught myself. From,
There you go.
dropping an F-bomb.
It's just a W. Like, look at our beautiful logo behind us. What if it was just the letter C and the letter A?
Can we go through all 32 teams and you just rate them?
I think we'll save that for
Rip them.
tomorrow. I think tomorrow will be our football episode. We'll have some Canuck stuff as well, but obviously Wyatt Arndt is going to join us, and it's that much anticipated football quiz. So you can be sure to look forward to that. But for now, we're signing off. For my co-host Harmon Dial, our technical producer Grady Sass, our thanks again to Dave Hall for joining us. My name is Dave Woodrelli. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.